You are tuned to Grecian Echoes here at WNTN 1550 AM in Cambridge, Needham in Boston. We're streaming at GrecianEchoes.com. It's Mondays with Meleti, and your host Meleti Pouliopoulos here with you for the morning, and here with you right now to say we have a very special guest that is going to be joining us by telephone, Dr. Elaine Thomopoulos, who has a PhD in psychology from Illinois Tech in Chicago. She's the author of A History of Greece, The Greeks of Berrien County, Michigan, and the editor of Modern Greece and the Greek American Pioneer Woman of Illinois. She serves as a managing editor of books and Greek American Scientist supplements to the National Herald. She was the project director of the Greeks of Berrien County, Michigan, and Greek American Women of Illinois, both of which featured lectures, oral histories, and exhibits. As Director of Social Services for the Hellenic Foundation in Chicago, she established a social service program for the Greek immigrants and their children. And as the administrator of the Greek American Community Services, she developed social services as well as humanities and arts programs. And I believe we have her on the phone. So, Kalimera Elaine.
Kalimera, Meletios. How
Oh,
are you?
wonderful, wonderful. I'm glad we're on time with our time change over the weekend. How did that affect you? Was that okay?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. So, and you're calling from Chicago this morning, or the Chicago area, I
This
should say?
morning from Chicago, yeah. This
Yeah,
morning from Chicago.
wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us here. And, in that introduction, you have done so many things. You get to a point where you say to yourself, gee, how can I boil it all down? But that was a pretty good summary. I'd like to start and ask you some questions about the Greek American Community Services Organization. And just to start, how did it get started? What was the need? Where did that come from?
Well, we had this, we there was a need for a nursing home. Really, we started there, and also the cultural programs. We were very interested in establishing cultural programs as well as other social service needs. There was the Hellenic Foundation, which was doing a superb job. That's where I had started with, but they had decided not to go ahead with a nursing home, and we thought that we it was I knew because I used to go visit people, Greek people in nursing homes, and they were very isolated. And
Yes.
Dr. Kudis, who was very instrumental in building the nursing home, in collecting money for the nursing home, also had visited his patients in nursing homes and felt that they weren't getting the kind of service. They couldn't speak English at that time.
Well, that's the
They
thing,
they
right?
uh,
Yeah.
they had a very difficult time even communicating. They were very isolated.
Hmm.
So that was one of the things. And we branched out through Greek American Services later with other programs.
Okay.
But it was an exciting time.
What is the time frame here for the Hellenic Foundation in Chicago? What period did the discussions of the nursing home first come up? What years about would you say?
Well, it was when we formed Greek American Community Services 1983.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it had been um, uh, of interest to the community. Some of the Greeks felt we take care of our own, but it was sometimes very difficult to do so,
Yeah.
and so that the we did other things as far as taking care of the elderly, but one thing we were missing was a nursing home. So it was 1983, but actually the Greek American Nursing Home Committee
Hmm.
came out of Greek American Community Services, but they established themselves as a separate organization very, very early.
Okay. Yes, because as I saw from the information you had sent to me, you secured funding and you received 100% of the funding of the grant proposals that you were submitted. And it was very clever because you had done multi-ethnic humanities projects, and you had done exhibits, And so there were social services and cultural arts programs that you had done, and under the
Yeah, the Greek
Greek.
American Community Services. Uh,
It,
we took over another program. I had left the Hellenic Foundation to be the director of a Lutheran Social Services Illinois project called Community Advocacy Network.
mm,
And about 3 years later, we ran out of funding for that program. So we embraced it within Greek American Community Services.
yeah,
So we had outreach to the elderly. We had a home helper that would go into the Greek elderly's homes and help out. But we also did cultural programs, and the 100% wasn't probably 100% funding, maybe not completely 100%, but most of the funding for it's a separate program, for our cultural program came from grants. We did a lot of outreach to funding agencies such as the Black Grant Program of the City of Chicago, and such as the um, Illinois Humanities Council. And we were very lucky. We also had a very talented young man that was helping us write the grants, and that was Steve Frango.
oh
And
yes,
so he would help, and we would all, John Sahiris and I, we were the founders of Greek American Community Services. We're also involved in writing the grants, but we were very lucky in obtaining grants to fund the various cultural programs. We even had a conference, a
So,
student
it's
conference.
interesting, all of these things that you did. Several things now that probably would be in nursing homes, the senior uh, projects that you would do, say, that you would find them in the nursing home, but you were offering them in the community, and you had received funding and support. Did you partner with any organizations in doing this, or any church
Yeah, we partnered with
organizations?
a lot, but just to make sure, the Greek American Nursing Home Company was a separate organization, and many of us were on both boards, but that
Oh,
was a separate organization.
right.
Greek American Community Services focused on. We opened up a daycare center,
Oh, you
so
did.
that would be
Okay.
a part of the continuum, and we also had a lot of programs in the community to the general. Even we opened it up to everybody, but we partner with both Greek organizations and other ethnic organizations. I mean, we partnered with, like, I'd say, about 8 or 9 different ethnic groups
Oh,
in
okay.
our different programs.
Well, you may have heard if you were listening to the radio earlier, we were talking about the radiothon, that we have an annual radiothon here to benefit our nursing home and the Hellenic Nursing and Home and Rehabilitation Center in Canton, Massachusetts. It took years for the women's organization to raise the funding and get the interest and the support to get the nursing home opened. So it's quite a process there. Now, when you were thinking about a nursing home, I understand that you came to visit the nursing home here in the Boston area?
Oh yeah, I was very impressed with what they had and how volunteers did it. And we had the same difficulty. We took years and years. It might have been like 20 years. They organized the nursing home in 1984 or 83, the
Hmm.
committee, and
Yes.
it didn't open till like 2000 and maybe 2001. So it's
Oh,
very similar. I think the difference is that we do have a lot of Greek residents that come to the nursing home today, and it was like at the beginning, it was like, wow. I haven't checked it recently, but the Greek people have embraced it, and it's mainly a lot of the immigrants, and sometimes the second generation that have come there, because the immigrants that came after World War II are
yes.
like now in their 80s, and some of
Hmm.
them are in the 90s, and there are others that came in the 70s that have that may be using it also. So it'll be still active, I think, as far as reaching out to the Greek community.
Yes, I'm very impressed at how well it's been embraced and how well it's doing there. It's in a state-of-the-art facility that they have with 198 beds, and they have a chapel, a gift shop, a beauty salon, and spa. And
Yeah, no, it's really wonderful. My
it's
mom was there for a while.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah. So the community, I want to let you go back to the Greek American Community Services just for a minute and ask, are those programs still happening? I mean, you had cultural programs, all kinds of programs. Are they happening in one form or another there in the Chicago area?
Oh yeah, we're very active in terms of cultural programs. Greek American Community Services shut its door, I think, in 2001 or 2002. It's been not functioning. Greek American Community Services, they lost a lot of their funding to operate the daycare center. That's when the seniors come in during the day and then leave.
Oh,
But
yes.
there have been other programs. Now the National Hellenic Museum, which wasn't as active then when we were doing the cultural programs, has done some. With this COVID, of course, it's been very difficult. And I've been active in Greek American Community Services, and they've done a lot in terms of programs for the community. And we did a grant even through Greek American Greek Women's University Club to I wrote up a grant along with some of the very dedicated members of Greek Women's University Club to do a project called Greek American Women in Illinois,
Oh, I do
and
want
that
to ask
had
you
a
about that. Yeah, I would like to discuss that a little later. But the community services, you had done so much work there, and I wanted to thank you. For those people who are just joining, we are speaking with Dr. Elaine Thomopoulos, an independent scholar, writer, and editor from the Chicago area. Originally born in Chicago, Elaine?
in Elmhurst. It's a suburb of Chicago. I've been here all my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was the church? I know that you were very active in the church growing up. What church were you involved with there?
Us, well, it was Assumption Greek Orthodox Church in Chicago.
Ah.
We would travel by bus to go there from the suburbs.
Oh, really? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, until my mom learned to drive, and my dad took off, and sometimes we'd take the car, but during the weekdays we'd go by bus. There was a program
Oh,
at
that's
the
really
church. Yeah.
nice. Yeah. Yeah. So that's wonderful. And the community in Chicago, you said, is still very strong, which is good to hear. The Greek community is still very strong there, and that there's a lot of activities going on. I'd like to jump now to the project that was the Greeks of Berrien County, which culminated, I think, in an exhibit that is still running. The Greeks of Berrien County, Michigan. And it was because it was such a fantastic project, another fantastic project, and a history of the Greek immigrant experience in Southwest Michigan. This was done with the History Center at Courthouse Square in Berrien Springs. And can you tell us a little bit about what drove that project? How did that get started?
I was Berrien County Historical Association,
Mm,
and I just went into their office, and I had written the the book Greek American Pioneer Women.
yes.
It was like sort of like a cold call. I mean, I made an appointment, and I was surprised that the director there was very interested in doing something regarding the Greek community. He was
Oh,
a forward-looking person that believed that American history is also ethnic history,
yes.
and so he said, "Yeah, let's do it." And I told him I could help. We could work together in writing a grant. And so we wrote up a grant. I had all the contacts because of all the projects I had done before. So I had a whole slew of scholars that really helped out with even the grant writing and reviewing it, and then speaking later. We had two different grants. One was more research as well as speakers,
Mm.
and with the second grant, we were able to do the exhibit, which still exists. It's still there at our church. And we were also very fortunate in having the church work with us.
Yes.
So we had the church and the historical association working together
Yeah.
to put together this grant. And Mike Kerhulis, who was very active in the Saint Annunciation and Saint Pataskevy Church in New Buffalo, Michigan, really helped in terms of he had a lot of photos. We also went to other people and got photos. We did a lot of interviews. We might have done like 50 interviews.
That's the whole thing,
So
you
we did
know.
a lot of interviews and did research in terms of what was this small community, not a large
Yes, yeah.
community.
You know, a lot of people don't realize what goes in. They may go see an exhibit, but they don't realize how much work goes into something like that. All the research you had done, exploring archival sources, various government records, census data, nearly 500 photographs that you had taken in and processed, and numerous artifacts, and that you had done an oral history project as part of it with over 50 interviews. And that's really something. That's very, very impressive. Do you think that it could be used as a model for other communities?
Oh, certainly. I mean, you do need a lot of it's a lot of work, and we also had Columbia College. It's in Chicago,
Yes.
but they interviewed. Um, there was a class. We hooked up with a class there, oral history class, and those students helped us interview those who had vacationed
Right. Oh,
in
great.
Berrien County.
Yeah.
So we had that other resource, and we had the instructor, as a supervisor there. The main problem was just getting, which is a problem sometimes with oral histories, is getting people to agree to do the oral history. But we were able to find, um, I maybe 50. I don't know how many, maybe 20. I don't remember exactly. But we were able to find the people that were, told us about their experiences. So we also had not only the people that actually settled in Berrien County, Michigan, which is just the other side of Indiana, Southwest Michigan,
Hmm.
and but we also had those that vacationed there in the
Oh,
40s, the 50s, the
yeah.
60s, the 70s, the 80s. It was a really fascinating project.
Yeah.
But you could use that as a model, but it is a lot of work, like you said.
It's a
And
lot
we
of
were able to
work.
get the funding
Well,
through
that's the
Michigan
key,
Humanities
Elaine.
Council.
That's the key. You know, you have a vision. I always say, you know, we have this situation where the people with the ideas don't have the money, and the people with the money don't have the ideas. And somehow, when there's a marriage of it, and we end up having to go for grants, and it's quite a process because you have to apply for them, and gee, you're not sure, and do you have any other supplemental ways of generating revenue for all the work? People don't, they want the product, but they don't participate in that process.
Yeah,
But,
they should have. And you know what? We also had in kind, so we had to have our
oh,
own funding
yeah,
too.
I'm sure.
And a lot of that funding was volunteer work. So
Right.
so what they call in kind is that the organization that gets funded puts in their own um, money, but that could be in terms of working for free.
Right,
So
that's what it is. It's I do in-kind donations all the time, and you know, it's so we have to do a certain amount of that, I think. But I like how that you had students involved. We have such an opportunity here in the Boston area to launch these projects either through the universities and colleges or through our existing organizations. You know, I've been saying to the Sons of Pericles chapters that, gee, you really should be interviewing the older Ahepans. I mean, those are the people that, you know, we've got to get to that generation. So how do we inspire that? Now, Elaine,
it's difficult, yeah.
it's
But
very
you do.
difficult. Yeah, we're
And then you also have to have guidance. They have to be guided in terms of how to conduct the interview, and that's why it was really nice to have this oral history
yeah.
teacher that taught oral history, there to guide them.
Yeah, you need a methodology. You need to just otherwise someone will be talking for an hour about their apple tree, and unless they're a poet or something, it's not really probably the information that you want to get to. And so you structure it, and it's quite a process. About how many people would you say were involved in the project for the Berrien County Historical Association's the Greeks
How
at
many
Berrien County?
volunteers?
Yeah, how many people did you have
Well, we had
volunteering?
so many because we also had volunteers. They even came from the Genealogical Society. I think there was some couple there from the Berrien County Historical Association. They came from our church. They came from. Um, we put out a notice. We trained volunteers for the community. In fact, we got more non-Greek volunteers to do the oral histories than we did Greek volunteers.
Isn't that
The Greeks came
something?
to our oral history training, but then
Oh,
dropped out. But there were several non-Greeks that were so enthusiastic, and
oh,
they might have each one of them might have done like nine of Greeks in Berrien County,
no
and they
kidding.
really enjoyed it, and the people that were interviewed enjoyed it also.
Yeah.
So that was really of interest. And the same thing, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to organize the oral history because it takes a lot of commitment. People are scared to go out and interview. Not scared, but they just don't know. They don't know if they could do it. They're not confident in themselves.
Or they
I think
say
that's part of it.
we have an oral history project now going on at St. George up in Manchester, New Hampshire. And the initial thing when we mentioned it a couple years ago and started talking with people, they were like, "What am I going to say? You know, I'm not that interesting." Well, you are. You really are. And don't be nervous and bring in some pictures and things like that and try to encourage them along because it's such an important part. It's not the only answer because, I've had those interviews. I've interviewed people where they've said, well, of course, you know me, I was the guy that walked on water. And I changed, the water into wine. And I said, "Really, that was you?" "Yes, that was me." And how do you take them out of their fantasies and trying to peel it all back?
Well,
But
that's what I'm saying.
right,
It's also hard for like you're trying to get the sons of Pericles. It's going to be hard to get them confident enough to go out. I think that's one of the reasons some of the Greeks dropped out. They just didn't feel confident enough to go out to interview the other people.
yeah, you need
So
you need to guide
it
them.
sounds like an easy project, but it isn't. But it's very exciting. I mean, it's so exciting.
It is
So
exciting. It is. It really is. But it's just, I really give you, you've done so much work. It's really fascinating. We should mention, too, at this time, that for summaries of some of your work, people can visit Yorgo Anignostou's website. And I wish there was an easy way of saying this. I think if you do a Google search on Elaine Thomopoulos, Thomopoulos, Dr. Elaine Thomopoulos, and put in, what should they put in, do you think, that would come up in a search that would give maybe the Greek Women's University Club? That might do it. But
I don't know. But I think Yorgos's project is very interesting. So maybe your listeners would just enjoy going there, and they could search out my name or there too,
yes,
because he's got so much there. It's called Aragon. It's
Ergon.
out of Ohio State.
Yes,
ERG.
yes, that's it. So
Yeah.
if you type in Ohio State Erdogan or Thermopolis and Erdogan, you're bound to go to find that site that Professor Anagnostou had put together. It's a great, great site. Very, very pleased with how that's developed, and nice to see that your projects are summarized. The You had mentioned earlier, and I said, "Gee, I want to go back to it later," and I'd like to do that now. Is to talk about the Greek Women's University Club in Chicago. I mean, I had no idea that it went all the way back to 1931. I mean, that's really something. And you had just given a paper on that at the Modern Greek Studies Association's conference up in Canada this year, was it in Toronto?
Yes, it was in Toronto. It was very, very
Yeah.
good conference. I did give a paper,
Yeah.
and I had just finished my research on a Greek Women's University Club. You're right. It was started so early, 1931.
And what did it come out? It came out of, again, it came out of a need. And you had written, you had said to me there was women were not allowed. It was there was a point in time where we know this that a lot of the clubs were just for men, and a lot of this and a lot of that were just for men, and even women in those years couldn't even vote. And it just took.
Well, they could vote by 1931, but
Yeah,
the Greek women,
yeah.
and I think it's true with some of the other women in America, they weren't encouraged to go to school. Sometimes not allowed to go to school.
Well, they
They were,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So these women, who had graduated,
Mm.
wanted to help others to achieve an education, and so there were like 8 women that joined together, 7 or 8 women, the early pioneers of this organization.
Mm.
They joined together and said, we want to help others to get an education. And they did.
And
They did. They even, at the early years, they even supported high school. I mean, their records in the early years are not, I mean, you lose records. How many years ago? That's 90 years ago.
right.
So they've lost them. But luckily, they had some newspaper clippings in the Tribune,
Yes.
and I was able to find out that they even supported high school kids, uh, girls. They
No
paid
kidding.
their books or their I don't know if they needed books, but their lunch and their transportation and whatever else they needed, so that they could go to finish high school.
Oh,
So they started out with the high school students
right, right.
to then finish high school, and then they also then started, which we still do, the scholarship program that has been functioning all these years.
Right. That's wonderful. That's just wonderful. And tell me now that there's a book, and I have it in my hands here. It's a part of the Images of America series, and it's the Greek American Pioneer Woman of Illinois. And it's was put out by the Greek Women's University Club, and it was edited by yourself, Dr. Elaine Thomopoulos. And was this a project that how did you come about with this? I mean, this is one of my favorite books, by the way, in the Image of America series, Greek American Pioneer Woman of Illinois. How did you come up with this idea of doing this book? This is just phenomenal.
Um, I knew of several women that had were very instrumental in the Greek community and the writer community,
Hmm.
and had women have not been written about or researched in terms of what they have done.
I know.
And
Yeah.
so I thought this would be a good way to bring this to the attention of the community. And these women just were outstanding women, and they were very early on. I mean, B.T. Pooley, uh, Georgia B.T. Pooley came very early,
Right.
and by the 1880s had established so many different organizations and was so instrumental. And it was a time when mostly it was just Greek young men here.
Yes.
And yeah, and then Petrakis, everybody knew Presitera Petrakis,
Yeah.
and um, and Harry Mark Petrakis, who is a novelist that has written about, and short story writer who has written about the Greek American community, is her son. Um, anyway, she did so much in terms of helping the disadvantaged in the community. I mean, she would go to court for a young man. She would collect money for someone that needed clothing or food. She would go out of her way, and she was also very active in establishing organizations
Yes.
within the church. Her her husband was a priest at St. Constantine in Holland,
I had no
and
idea. That's really, yeah.
and the other one is more recent is Elaine Thomopoulos, who served in uh, the Congress and both the House of Representatives and the Senate in the state of Illinois, and was just a majority leader for the Republican Party. She was like also like a star. I mean, she became one of the first lawyers in Illinois, women lawyers in Illinois,
Yes.
and she was like amazing. And of course, maybe your readers, listeners know Margaris, Papazoglu Margari.
Right.
Uh, she's like a chronicler of the Greek American community. She wrote in Greek.
Mm.
In Greek, I'm sorry. She wrote in Greek. She
Yeah.
wasn't. She was an Asia Minor refugee,
Right.
but her work really is excellent and is being. She became an archondisa, one of the only women at that time in the 60s.
Jeez.
And let's see. Oh, and the other is a social worker that really helped the immigrants that came after World War II. And she's maybe some of your listeners might know Nick Ashford.
Oh,
Some their
sure. Yes, he's here
Yeah,
in the area. Yeah.
yeah. So it was his mother, and Nick and Robert wrote the piece about their mother. But she was a social worker that worked for the Immigrant Protective League and
Oh,
did marvelous work in terms of getting the immigrants established in this country, in the city of Chicago. She worked in Chicago.
she was.
Each of these,
Yeah.
yeah, each of these women were. I didn't write all the information.
Hmm.
We were very lucky to get very talented writers, mostly
Yes.
two of the children, like Robert and Nick,
Yeah.
and then Nick. The Margaris is Vivian Callan, her daughter,
Yes.
and Copen wrote some sections. I wrote some sections, but we had a wonderful array of writers, so that's why we say it's good.
Yeah,
I
it's
just
it's
sort of
it's
put it
excellent.
together.
It's so well put together. The Greek American pioneer woman of Illinois, part of the Images of America series. This book, put up by the Greek Women's University Club and edited by yourself, Elaine Thomopoulos, still available, still out there. And I believe it was, if you happen to go to Chicago and stop by at the museum, you can pick up a copy there. Maybe that's where I got mine way back. I'm not sure, but
It could be. I don't know because they're
yeah,
just opening up now,
yeah,
right
yeah.
after COVID. So I don't know what they have, but they are opening up, and they've been very helpful to me in doing my research.
You know,
Very helpful.
yeah, you're still involved with the Greek Women's University Club?
Oh yes,
You still a
I'm
member?
still a
Yeah.
member there and still active there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important, especially the historical look back. Of course, what you're doing is to me is just there's nothing more important or more immediate for us right now than to try to capture our history as a Greek American community, both internally what we've done for each other, and in this case the women who were just phenomenal leaders and had done so much, and to write that history, but also we have to write the American history and what part did the Greek immigrants play in that. And that's a constant struggle as well, for us to get all of that out. But very, very impressed with all the work that you've done, Elaine. Dr. Elaine Thomopoulos, who is joining us this morning from Chicago. She's independent scholar, writer, and editor. And you can see Elaine has made available a lot of her the information and these projects that we've discussed this morning. That is available on the Ergon site. There's a nice write up about the Greek Women's University Club. and also about the Greeks of Berrien County, Michigan. And I believe they're out there too. Our audience can read about the Greek American Community Services Organization, and just work that I think could be modeled and other. I'm hoping some of this work gets replicated here. To be
Well, I
honest
just,
with you, Elaine.
yeah, and if anybody wants to get any advice on it, I'd be glad to,
Oh, that's
help
good.
them.
That's excellent. That's really
Yeah.
that's really what it's about. All right. Well, wanted to thank you. Any closing thoughts, Elaine, before we say goodbye?
No, I just appreciate all you're doing. I mean, this is a wonderful program,
Thank you.
and it's live streamed. I didn't realize that you can get it from other places other than your local area. So
Yes.
that's great.
Yeah.
And all the work that you've been doing in terms of compiling information about Greek American history, I really appreciate that.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much for having me
It's great,
on your
Elaine. It's
program.
really great. It's you've done so much, and I really appreciate you speaking with us this morning. I also appreciate all the help that you've given me, especially with research from the Chicago area. Just wonderful. Thank you, Elaine. Have a good day.
Okay, you too. Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
I
Bye now.
enjoyed being
Bye.
here. Bye.
Thank you. It was so nice to be speaking with Dr. Elaine Thomopoulos, an independent scholar, writer, and editor, and really a community leader. She's done excellent work, and I invite you to look at that, see if that's what's out there online. You are tuned to Mondays with Meleti with your host, Meleti Pouliopoulos. Stay tuned for the news report with Nicoletta at the top of the hour.